So, yeah, welcome back to the show, everyone. Build Stuff 2020, streaming live from literally all over the world. I think we got 3 continents tuning in to contribute to the next part. So just a little announcement. We're about to hand over to my good friend Matthew Renze and his panel of AI experts for a panel discussion. After that, Rokas will be doing magic live on Zoom. If you want to join that, have a look in Pine Tool. There is a link. It's an interactive session, so be sure to click the link, join that, see some real close-up internet magic. That's going to be something a little bit special. But right now, please will you welcome to introduce the panelists and moderate our discussion, AI is everywhere, and talk about the ethical and sociological implications of that. Please welcome to the Build Stuff virtual stage, Matthew Renze.
Thank you, Dylan. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion panel on AI is everywhere, the future of AI and how we should be preparing for it. So as Dylan mentioned, I'm Matthew Renze. I'll be moderating our discussion panel today, and we are all very excited to have you join us for this discussion panel on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and a little bit of data science. So our 3 panelists today are Håkan, Marianna, and Henk, and I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves here, starting with Håkan.
Okay, so let me start. So my name is Håkan Silfvernagel. I've been working in process automation and robotics, and now for the past 10 years I've been working as a consultant. So my educational background is a master's degree in electrical engineering, and I also have a master's degree in behavioral science. And I'm in artificial intelligence and Internet of Things. So I've taken some classes at MIT for that, and I'm also quite involved in the local user community here in Oslo. So I'm part of the Oslo AI meetup and also part of the Norwegian.net user group. And I'm also Microsoft MVP in AI. And currently I'm working as a manager for AI and big data for a Norwegian consultancy company called Miles.
I'm Marianna Diachuk, and then I'm working as a data scientist in Data Robot currently. And before that, I worked in different startups, which are local Ukrainian startups, as a data scientist as well. And I have a background in software engineering, and I'm also part of Women Who Code community. And I'm organizing and speaking at some of the Women Who Code events.
So hi everyone, my name is Henk Boelman, and I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and I'm focusing on the topic AI. I have a developer's background, so I've been developing websites and applications for, I think, 15 to 20 years. And the last 5 years, I've been moving into the AI space and trying to understand what this AI is all about.
Got about 20 years of experience doing software development, data science, and AI. And I spend most of my time now teaching people how to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning through online courses, on-site training, and the consulting that I do as well, too. So a few pieces of housekeeping. In order to get the most out of our discussion panel today, we need you, the audience, to ask the questions for our panelists in order for them to answer. So please just type your questions into the chat window, and I'll be scrolling through the chat window trying to find questions that I believe are going to provide the most value to the entire audience, and then we'll ask those to our panelists. And the more questions you ask, the better our conversation will be. So be sure to ask lots of questions. Anything you want to know about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science, we've got a panel of experts that can answer these questions that you have. All right, so starting with our first question, I think there's a lot of confusion about artificial intelligence. There's a lot of marketing buzz packed into that word. So to help level set and get everyone on the same page, I'm just going to start by asking each of you, what is your definition of artificial intelligence? We'll start with Håkan.
Yeah, I would say that my definition would be a system that can learn from previous data, from historical data. I think that's an important definition for me.
Marianna?
For me, I would say it's more like a simulation of a human intelligence, but by generalization of several aspects and turning that into some automated system which can make decisions.
And Henk?
Yes, for me that is our kind of system that try to seem intelligent.
Gotcha. So something that approaches like a natural intelligence or a human intelligence.
Indeed, yeah, like chatbots is like a good example. It is a lot of if-then-else statements and some machine learning, and it tries to imperson something. tries to see
Gotcha.
that opposite. Yeah.
Well, so since we're all on the same page with artificial intelligence now, I think the question that most people are interested in knowing is essentially, how do we prepare our careers for artificial intelligence? What should we be doing right now in order to prepare for this coming wave of AI automation? We'll start with Marianna. I apologize.
I think we can do that on like several levels, personally and like company based. So it's different in terms of like saying whether it's done by person specifically. Like you can read about something, you can learn things, and there is quite a lot of resources to do that in all kinds of formats. And in terms of like education, I think it can be more about introducing some inner tech talks and supporting your employees to attend conferences like Bill Stuff and others, and reading more and finding out about that, as well as consulting with some other companies if you like don't know where AI can help in your specific sphere.
How about you, Henk? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, how should we prepare for our careers? I actually I can tell you my experience, what I did, because I was a developer and I was always thinking this AI thing is going to take over the world, and was kind of like in that space, like it's like, ew, it's scary. So how I tried to understand it when I started learning it, actually, I just went to the tech places and started to figure out how the code works, what it actually was, how does your data look. So for me, I really got to learn it by actually trying to make a cat and dog classifier, to actually to figure out how it works. And the same with speech, trying to understand how that actually does the waveforms into tensors and those kind of things. So that gives me like a general understanding about how the systems works, how they learn, and also what the pitfalls are. Because as a development community, we like all aware that those pitfalls are there. But it all starts with understanding, for me at least, how the tech works.
Excellent. And Håkan?
Yeah, I think you can have a couple of different aspects on this. So if you come from development background, as I did, so when I started out in around 2013, 2014, what I did was I enrolled in a Coursera program called Data Science, which was more or less a 1-year program or 10 1-month courses about data science. So it took you sort of all the way from how you can analyze, get data quality, all the way to how you can actually build an application and visualize your machine learning algorithms by using R in this case. So I think there are lots of resources, both free and for paid resources, that you can use. But I think it's important because data, from being a developer, when I was a developer, I had probably maybe a little bit naive view of what data actually is. So as a developer, maybe you don't really realize that there are different types of qualities that will actually define on what can you use this data for. So I would propose try to take some sort of an overview class that can give you the full aspects of what you can actually do. But then I also think as a citizen, there are some countries, like for example Finland, they have put on their national agenda that they want everyone in Finland should be able to take an online course which will give you the basics of AI. And right now the name of the course escapes my mind, but you can probably just look it up. And now this course has actually been translated to multiple languages, so maybe you can find it in your own language. So I can also recommend that course.
Yeah, I've seen that, the Finland's public education program, and I thought it was actually very well done. I was very impressed by how it turned out. Quick question for you, though. The data science specialization, was that the Johns Hopkins data science specialization through Coursera?
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
I took that as well.
Okay.
I actually thought it did a great job. And coincidentally, I haven't officially mentioned this in public, but I just got accepted into Johns Hopkins Master's Program of Artificial Intelligence just 2 weeks ago. So I'll be continuing on with Johns Hopkins for higher education. Well, and speaking of education, so some of you have already mentioned some of the places that you think we should go to educate ourselves about AI. But if you have any additional thoughts on where to go, or Jan also asked the question, what should we be skipping when we're educating ourselves on AI? I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts on what we should learn and what we should just avoid or skip altogether. We'll start with Henk.
What we should learn, yes. I think it is good to know from every little bit, at least like the base, what that is. And there are many different roles, of course, when you build an AI system. My specialty lies more on how you train those models on scale and how you actually run them in production. And I'm not too focused on like how do you prepare the data, how do you compose the model. That is mostly someone else in my team does that. But I'm aware that that has to be done. We also have another team that is actually checking our models for fairness and if there are no biases in, and that kind of job. I can't do it, but I'm aware. So I would say that you need to have like that general understanding of all the elements and then specialize in one.
Excellent. Håkan?
Yeah, so as I said, there are a lot of courses that you can take on Coursera. So the one that we mentioned here is the data science specialization, but there is also courses about, for example, about TensorFlow or machine learning. So there's a site that you can look at, deeplearning.ai. So they have, I guess, 4 or 5 different courses that you can take. So if you need to have a certificate, it will cost you a little bit of money, but you can also take them for free if you just want to have the knowledge. Then there are also other, like, for example, Udacity has also really great programs, but here I suppose that you should try to get sponsored by your employer if you have the ability, because these programs are usually quite costly, but they're also very good. So, but and then you can also, actually, there's a site called Kaggle, which I can also recommend. So what Kaggle is it's a collection of data and data sets, and also a collection of how have people actually trying to make discoveries in these sets of data. So that can be quite useful just to have a look at, and that's completely for free. And you can also engage yourself in user groups. Maybe there are some local user group that you can go to, which is about data science or machine learning or something. But
and Marianna?
I just wanted to also add, as Henk also said here, there are also different levels. So either if you take, the Microsoft stack, you can use maybe the cognitive services, and then maybe you need to know, maybe you don't need to have, so much in-depth knowledge, but if you go a step further down and you actually want to use the different type of algorithms, you need to have a more breadth in your knowledge. And also if you want to go into, more basic research, then you really need to know everything about, the mathematics and how things are working.
Marianna?
I think I would start from some books like Field Guide to Data Science. I don't remember whether it's like exactly called like that, but it's written by Boelman and Hamilton, and it's quite good in terms of describing how what are the fields in data science, what is the difference between models and algorithms, because people sometimes confuse that as well. What is like the methodology of developing machine learning models and so on. And I think that's a good first step. And after that, I think it's really important to start from practicing stuff, that you can just take the simplest model and some, I don't know, Iris or Titanic data set and try things out. And if you feel like you need to dive deeper into figuring out which algorithms you want to learn more, or what you want to use for pre-processing or feature engineering, you can do that in the process. But at first it's important to learn like what are the steps of this process in overall before diving deeper into all the concepts. And I think that skipping at first some of the like aspects of how algorithms actually work inside is probably okay in the beginning because you are not really worrying at first about like the quality of your model in production. You're not worrying yet what are you choosing for specific use cases. So it's okay to skip at first how everything works, like specifically on a mathematical level. But after that, you definitely should like dive deeper into that too.
Excellent. And as a online course author myself, I should probably also mention that I have like 12 courses or so on Pluralsight on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science. And a few of them are actually free as well too, including one on preparing your career for AI, which coincidentally is one of the main focuses of this discussion. So moving on, once we've got our education, how can we start using these problems, or how can we start using these tools to solve real world problems? Or someone in the audience asks them, do you have any AI projects that you work on now or you had in the past? So like, tell us about how you're using AI to solve real world problems. Starting with Håkan.
Yep. Yeah, so probably since a lot of things that we do are sort of covered by some clauses, I can just talk more in general terms here. So for example, one common thing is if you want to have a better understanding of your users, of your user base, and you want to customize your message to your users, you can use machine learning to divide your users into different types of groups or into different kinds of clusters. And then you can see that what are these people in this specific cluster interested in. So then you can customize your information to them, and then you can make yourself being much more relevant to that specific user group instead of just broadcasting the same message to everyone. So that's one example of what you can use machine learning for.
Marianna?
Yeah, currently I'm on the project that I work on. They are probably all AI related, and right now it's mostly about the specific capabilities of Data Robot platform, which is ML platforms for those who are not really familiar with that. And it's not really on specific use cases, but I work more on like algorithms and improving the capabilities of Data Robot to help people working with different use cases. But talking about other real world problems that you can solve, in the past, I mostly worked on development of anti-fraud systems and credit scoring systems, as well as helping marketing to predict where to invest and how to engage more customers.
And Henk?
Yes, I have worked on an AI project before I joined Microsoft, so that is about 1.5 years ago now. And that was a project about how you could detect counterfeit packaging. So you can imagine there were these electronic suppliers that had boxes, and people were faking those boxes. And the company wanted to have an app that they could give to importers and customs, that they could just take a photo of the box and then tell if the box was counterfeit, yes or no. And that was one of my earliest projects I did. And when we started that project, we were like, okay, you have enough data, you have enough photos, and turned out there is no one that ever gives you enough data and enough photos to train that magic AI system that will just recognize it all and start thinking for the counterfeiters so that they can also detect new things it has never seen and so on. So we actually ended up solving it with a combination of machine learning and a lot of code around it. So we trained some very specific models, for instance, to detect if a logo was a real logo or a counterfeit logo, or icons on packages were good. But we also use things like cognitive services to do text recognition, just to see if the text matches the other thing on the box. So it was not just eventually, when we started, we were thinking we're going to create this one big algorithm, but we ended up with like all very small, very specialized models, or even cognitive services, outsourced models, wrapped that in software and then created an AI system.
Excellent. And Henk, when I first met you, you were also working on a project that did use machine learning in order to classify types of injuries to help medical workers in in Africa or third world countries. Are you still working on that project?
No, I stopped, but that was a very interesting project. I also learned I didn't have enough data to actually do the right prediction. But what we used there mainly in the app is it was an app that was there to assist medical field workers to be more effective. So I also work at an NGO, and what we do is we go in Uganda, we go to the field, and there we treat wounds of school children, so they don't infect and they don't have to go to the hospital to make, just to prevent it.
Well, and speaking of using, continue.
Oh yeah, so thank you. And what we did there was we kept everything in in books with pencils. So there was no history of the patient. We didn't know if the child every day had wounds or maybe once. So we started with this app to make things easier and to collect a little bit of data from these patients. And all those people were wearing gloves. And Uganda names are not very easy. So they had to type remove the gloves and start typing those names. So the first thing we actually implemented was a very simple face recognition system. That you could just take a photo from the child, it registered, and it looked up the data and matched the case. There were no names involved, not necessary, and then we could see the history and the progression of the wound of the child. And the idea was that we would collect so much data over time that we could actually predict if the wound was getting better or worse. But that didn't give us enough data yet.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of using artificial intelligence to improve, the good of all of humanity, that leads us to our question about AI and ethics. So, how can we ensure that we're using this technology? I mean, you have to think of it, it's really a superpower that we have. How can we use this new superpower ethically and responsibly? We'll start with Marianna.
I think at first we have to think about the common definition of ethics, because it can be really different for different use cases and even different countries and regions. And that's why it's kind of hard to encode that and automate in some general system which you can use to evaluate whether our models are ethical enough or not. But what I can say for sure that at least we can look at specific use cases and try to generalize an overall understanding of ethics. But it definitely should be included as a step in evaluating of models, because sometimes we kind of skip that and notice some of the faults only when the model is already in production, and we see that something weird is happening. And I think that some of the things can be done already in the stage of before deployment of the models, but during their evaluation.
Håkan?
Yeah, I agree with what Marianna said. And also, in addition, I think it's very important to already start when we do the data collection to try to make sure that we get data that is representative and which is not biased data, because we've seen that in the past that using biased data will have negative consequences. And then there was a previous presentation here about how we can use AI to detect emotions of people. And then there was a short discussion here about, is that ethical or responsible? So maybe we need some sort of a board, like here in Norway where I live, there is a lot of discussion of having something which we call an AI logarithmic board. So when you make a product that is using machine learning or AI, it needs to be approved by this board, which is a governmental agency. So that could be one way to look at this from a legislation point of view.
And Henk?
Yes, it was quite interesting what you say about emotions. I also saw it. So I wanted to maybe ask, we can start a poll in the chat what other people think of it. So we had in the Netherlands, we had these commercial banners on our train stations. And there was a camera in, that actually looked at you and classified your emotions if you were happy with the banner or that you were unhappy or disgusted or whatever it could classify, and collected that data to make the advertisement better. But there was no sign or anything that was actually doing it. And it was I think it was a big scandal that just cameras monitoring you looking at an ad at a public train station. So we had this whole movement of people just rolling around with duct tape and trying to put stickers on the cameras all over the train stations.
Interesting. Well, and speaking of like ethics and responsibility, I believe it was Jan in the audience asked, how are you guys verifying the correctness of your model? Like, how are you ensuring that they're producing accurate results? And I guess this is slightly outside of the ethics, but more in terms of the transparency. What are you guys doing in order to ensure that your models are either made publicly available or are transparent or explainable, or at least provide some kind of insight into why they've made the decisions that they've made? We'll start with Håkan.
Yeah, so first of all, there are some generic frameworks that you can use, like fairness, and there are also tools that you can use to try to explore the explainability of an algorithm, so that you can, because one of the challenges that you have is, for example, within the insurance industry or within the banking industry, if you're going to make an advice to a customer and you're using AI in order to form the basis for that advice, you need to be able to show or demonstrate how has this algorithm actually come up with this advice. You need to be able to backtrack it. So at least historically it's been difficult to use more advanced models such as deep learning, for example, because at least in the past that has been very difficult to explain how it has reached a state. But now with explainable AI, it opens up new types of possibilities that you can actually be able to explain some of these things.
Gotcha. Henk?
Yeah, so I don't have that much experience with creating explainable models, but as a consumer, I just want to know when an AI is making a decision about me. And I would want to be able to go somewhere and then see how the model is trained, what is used, so that it is explained to me, like how it worked and what the impact is of that decision. Can I recall it? What actions can I take if I don't think this model is making the wrong decision for me? But what can I do? How can you escalate it? So I think you should have this explanation, like this, same as what you have with medicine, like I don't know the English words, but in Dutch it would be bijsluiter. The thing that comes with a pack of medicine, like this is how the AI made the decisions, this is what can happen, this is how you can respond to it.
And Marianna?
Yeah, in terms of explainability, as it was already mentioned, there is quite a lot of tools to do that. And the simplest thing that you can do is basically to feed your predictions to decision tree and see like what kind of rules can be extracted from that. And from the thing that I do to preserve explainability as well is I try to look at the features which are the most important in the model to see what actually has like the biggest weight and the biggest value in terms of like model response, and to see whether actually there is some bias. And I also check what kind of data goes into the model. Like there are rules about the features that you can never use for models, better not to, like gender and age and race and so on. And also you can like evaluate models later on and to see by distribution of different features whether they are like biased towards specific regions, something like that. Like I had a similar problem in building anti-fraud system, that we've seen that some of the frauds that the model tends to predict that frauds come mostly from specific regions of the country. And it was a question whether we need to like change that or not, because there is a thing about the groups of frauds sometimes, but also it means that customers which come from the same region but they don't have any like fraud purposes, they can be identified as frauds as well, or just have higher risk scores, which is the bias as well.
Excellent. And we've got about 10 minutes left, but there's a question that seems to be on a lot of people's minds these days. And the question is, what does the future of artificial intelligence look like? Or more specifically, how is AI going to improve in the next 10 to 15 years? Or actually, let's go 5 to 10 years. And there's also the additional underlying question there that has been asked in the chat. When do you think we'll reach artificial general intelligence? So feel free to pontificate as much as you'd like on this. We'll start with Marianna for this question.
I think of general intelligence, I don't think that it's going to happen anytime soon. And as a person who actually works with AutoML, I can see that there is still a lot of things which cannot be automated. And AutoML is not here to just take all the jobs away from data scientists. It's more about simplifying the things for us and automating something routine and monotone, so we could work on more creative things which are more interested for us, and where human intelligence is the most the best to use for those kinds of tasks. And in the future, I think that more and more spheres will be using AI for different purposes. Like, as I see more government programs appear in different countries which try to use AI for that, for their different problems, as well as maybe some of the real world problems like water crisis and fires in forests. And I think that it's good that AI is not just commercialized, but can be used for these social problems as well. I don't know about the future, whether it's going to happen, but I would like to see how the gap between research and practical data science could close, because to me it seems that we do really a lot right now in terms of research, like in reinforcement learning, and there is so many other spheres which appear, but we cannot use it yet in the practical real world cases. So I would like to see that happen as well.
Excellent. Henk?
Yeah, I don't know how we can top on that, but that was an excellent answer. Yeah, so now I think basically the same. We're far from there, and as I see what I can do with AI, I can make some very dedicated systems that can do one task extremely good. It is going to take a very long time before we can make this all kind of seeing AI kind of thing. But I think the ease where we're going to will be able to use these dedicated systems is going to be it's going to go rapidly. And we're going to have a lot of services that will help us, at least programmers, make our life a lot easier, because most of these things are available in APIs, like form recognizers and those kind of things. I just send an image and I get it back. And I think 5 years ago, I don't even know what I had to do, but I had to train my own models, run it in my own infrastructure. So I think we will see in the next coming 5 to 10 years, a very big amount of these services taking place that can, and those ones are going to be very good and very fast.
Håkan?
Yeah, so so first of all, I don't think we will see artificial general intelligence anytime soon, actually. And then the second thing is that some people might be afraid that AI has come to take their jobs, but what I would say is that AI will probably create new types of jobs that doesn't exist now, and that we can't even we can't really fantasize about what these kind of jobs are, because they're not invented yet. But AI will help us invent these types of new jobs. And we can also say, we say AI is artificial intelligence, but we can also say that AI is assistive intelligence, that maybe in the past the human had to do everything, but then with AI could help us with the mundane work, with the routine work, so that we can focus on things that are much more interesting and stimulating for us to do. And hopefully AI and the human can work in symbiosis so that we can help the AI and actually train that up, so yeah. So I think also if we look back in time for those amongst us who were here in the 80s, maybe we remember that when the synthesizers were introduced into the music scene, a lot of people, they were really afraid, and they said that, oh, this will kill every traditional musicians. We will not have any guitarists, we will not have any pianists or drummers. But that hasn't happened. So what has happened instead, that the synthesizer has made it much more accessible to make music for everyone. So I think what we'll see in the future is that AI will be, an integrated part in our everyday technology.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with all of you. First, general artificial intelligence is at least 20 to 30 years away, if not possibly more. I think we'll probably end up creating more jobs than we will eliminate with artificial intelligence. And we really have to be focusing on the synthesis between humans and machines working together, creating a collective intelligence rather than human intelligence versus artificial intelligence. All right, so to start wrapping things up, I'm just let everyone know essentially what you're working on now, or what you're excited about, and where they can go to find more information about you. We'll start with Henk.
Oh, for me, I am actually working on some Learn modules. So we have Microsoft Learn, and I'm trying to create some AI Learn modules which are free for everyone. It will be ready in February, I hope. So still have to wait a little bit. But if they want to find more about me, they can go to my blog, henkboelman.com, and see my journey, how I'm trying to learn AI.
Excellent. Marianna?
I'm currently working on use cases which involve monotonistic constraints in data. So that's like my current project. And we can find me on Medium. I try to write some of the technical articles, and also I try to follow up on the themes that I'm speaking about in there as well.
Excellent. And Håkan?
Yeah, so I would like to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the community-based initiative that I'm driving together with another Microsoft MVP called Eve Pardy. So what we're doing is we will make everyone education about AI. So you should be able to start from scratch, from the ground, and then we'll start with the mathematical background that you need to have. We'll teach Python and SQL, and then we'll take our way up basic data science and initial machine learning algorithms up to much more advanced concepts in deep learning and reinforcement learning and explainability. So what we will do is we will have industry experts that will have sessions that we will stream both to YouTube and to Facebook and to Twitch. And this initiative is called AI 42. So if you want to know more about this, you can keep a look on my Twitter. So my Twitter name is Agrevlis, and we will probably start this in the beginning of the next year.
Excellent. And as for me, I'm currently I'm still promoting my last online course, which was a free course on preparing your career for AI. And I'm currently working on my next course, which is the Artificial Developers Toolkit, which will talk about a lot of these APIs and stuff that are available. So, Henk, I might need to get in touch with you here real quick to see if we can work on some demos together for it. And if you want to learn more about me or what I do, you can find everything on my website, MatthewRenze.com. So to start wrapping things up, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for this discussion panel today. And thank you to our panelists, Håkan, Marianna, and Henk, for the excellent answers and for contributing your time to the Build Stuff community. And finally, I also need to thank the Build Stuff conference organizers for putting this together, and for all the sponsors that made this conference possible.